Wholeness. Welcome to Notes of Nara. My name is Naj Rashida. I almost forgot to make a video. I spent the whole evening doing grad work, so here I am, and I'm going to wrap it up for the night. Ramadan Mubarak to many of you that are observing Ramadan. It is the holy month for many Muslims around the world. And I am taking part as a way to honor humanity. So yeah, Merry March, Happy March, Merry New Moon. We just had that a couple days ago. There's a lot of astrological events taking place this month, which is, I definitely feel it. I definitely feel it. But it's okay. And I told myself, you take a bite, chew, swallow, digest, and let it go. And do that every day, no matter what. Get something done, get something completed, and move on to the next thing. Because let me tell you something. There's just a lot of work. It just seems that, just a quick life update before we jump into the topic. It just seems that it's like the journey that I'm on with my career is never ending. Like there's just constant something that that it just needs to be done. And it's not like I don't want to do it. It's okay, sometimes I don't want to do it, but it's not like I have a disdain towards my work. It's just the time management, the time that should go into everything that needs to get done is just, there's just not, if I feel like there's just not enough time to give everything their due, the attention that it needs. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. It's a Monday. So the topic that I have felt very called to focus in on is ta-da! Accountability. The ability to hold yourself accountable, being responsible. And this is a really, really big practice for me. Holding oneself accountable is by far such a huge attribute, and it's a thing that I look into and study within myself, and it's a standard that I hold myself to and that I hold other people to. They don't know, but I'm constantly watching, constantly observing how people hold themselves accountable. Recently, just yesterday, I've been, something kind of came up for me that I have buried for quite some time. And it's not like buried in a sense where, actually, I'm just going to be blunt. I spiritually bypassed an issue. And what I did was, for many years, for over 2 decades, I have subconsciously carried the burden of another. Actually, a few people, but specifically just a burden in my family. And without getting into details, and when you suppress that, when you make that choice to love unconditionally, regardless of the choices that people make that reverberate throughout a family unit, and you just kind of supersede it with love and forgiveness and kindness. Like, I spiritually bypassed the mess left behind by someone else. And it wasn't until yesterday where I think something of visceral, raw emotion, it was time for me to release this. It was time for me to Really release the guilt that does not belong to me. And so, in this video, this introduction to the topic this month, it's really going to focus in on releasing energies, wounds, trauma, programming, conditioning, emotions, thought processes, belief systems, paradigms that do not belong to you. You must understand this. I must understand this. We all must understand, understand, overstand this. We can only be accountable for ourselves. We cannot, people will project. When people project their mess onto you, their garbage, their energetic trash, their trauma onto you, and you have a weak compass or a weak, I'll say, discernment. You have a very weak way of gauging what's your energy and what's yours, what's another's. You subconsciously take on what is not yours. When you take on what is not yours, you become dense, you become heavy, you become burdened. You then you become you begin to wear masks, right? And unfortunately, in my family, there's a little bit of a mask wearing, right? You mask, you cover when you aren't processing the energetic trash. It's almost like the landfill. Like, people will project the vomit, they'll just dump their crap onto you, and it's your account. You are accountable. You're then held accountable to pick and siphon through, like in a landfill, like what's metal, what's plastic, what's biodegradable. What can be reused, recycled. That's exactly what we need to do as human beings, as grown adults, when working, when doing soul work, when doing spirit work, when doing self work on the self. We have to acknowledge this. We are the garbage man. We are the garbage woman. And the metaphysical word for this would be alchemize. But here's the catch. Here's the thing that I really want to leave with you all. It is not your duty to alchemize other people's bullshit. It's not your responsibility, or you should not hold yourself accountable for other people's energetic trash, karmic residue, energetic residue that comes from outside. We spend our whole lives wondering why we're effed up and why we run into certain blocks and why we bump into certain obstacles. We have to truly sit with ourselves and ask, where is it? What is the source of my suffering? That's a heavy question, because sometimes we're so traumatized that we will over-identify with our suffering to the point where we become imprisoned, and we become imprisoned by our own suffering, and in this prison it becomes comfortable. It becomes safe. All the while, you're not living the life that you deserve. You're not living a fulfilling life. You're not finding your joy. You're not creating anything. You're just harboring onto this old trash that doesn't belong to you. So, yeah, yesterday I released something. I literally, after the release, it was a very uncomfortable conversation that I had. Well, it wasn't really a conversation. I mean, call it that. A blowout. An argument. But the relief that I felt after the release from my heart was just, I felt lighter. It was almost like decade after decade, it was finally time for me to get to release the delusion that someone had me agree with for such a long time. And it's a generational practice. And I no longer need to do it anymore. I don't have to wear the mask. I don't have to, put anyone on a pedestal or put someone down below my feet. We are equal. I look at people as equals. They may not perceive me that way, but I look at people as equals. No longer do I put people on this pedestal. And I did that. I did that with a specific person in my life. And as painful as that experience was yesterday, I'm so grateful that it happened, because it was a realization that if you think of the word accountability, okay, you have accountable, and you have the word account in there. And if you think of the bank account, if you're not managing your bank account, you don't know what money's being taken out. You don't know what monies are being put in. You don't know how much you have in your savings. You don't know how much that you don't have. Are you in the red? Are you in the green? You know, is someone taking something out? Are you paying for things you have no business paying for? It's taking, it's very empowering once you step into that space of being, activating, what am I trying to say? Like being the bank teller of your account. You know what I'm saying? You're not allowing the powers that be to just kind of pull you left or right, up and down. You know, you are fully responsible for filling your cup and emptying your cup. Um, and so, yeah, I would say moving forward with this month and the study of accountability and what that looks like, you know, start off by being honest with yourself and asking yourself what energies are mine, what programs are coming from myself, my inner world, or is this just residue from my parents, unresolved crap? And I would say maybe 60-75% of it comes from unresolved childhood issues projected by our parents. One very important note, I and I can only speak for myself because this is my practice. I don't sit here and I don't want to push blame on my mommy or my daddy. I don't do that. I'm a grown adult, and I'm accountable for the choices that I make in my life. I'm accountable for the consequences that I have to face based off the choices that I make in my life. I don't put that on my mother. I don't put that on my father. Um, Blame, shame, and guilt are sneaky little boogers that, if not checked, will calcify into your being and into your reality and into how you live your life. And yesterday, there was a calcification of guilt in me that did not belong to me. There was a calcification of shame that I had in me that did not belong to me, and I was carrying that to make the other person feel safe, to make the other person feel good, to make the other person believe that all is right in the world and that person has nothing to worry about because of the fakeness and the niceties and the smiles and the, you know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, I'm I'm actively going through things. I'm actively growing. I'm not going to sit here and act like I have all the answers. I never will have all the answers. I'm not a guru. All right? I'm not a guru. However, it's just such a human, it's just part of the human experience going through this right now. And seeing where I kind of fall flat. And it's like I'm so grateful that happened yesterday because it makes me that much more um, aware of what's going on within me. And it even ties to like my career. It ties into everything and how I live my life. I can't take on the burdens of others. I don't know if it's a past life thing. I don't know what it is about me, but it's like for the longest time I used to believe that I was meant to alchemize energy, but I didn't quite specify exactly what that gift was. Like I have this ability to do that, but I have to truly, what's so hard for me is that I can't eat the sin of another person. I can't alchemize the energy on another person, from another person. The only energy that I can truly master and manipulate and alchemize is my own. That is, it's just as a sovereign being of the highest order, I I've come to that conclusion. I can't save the world. I can't save the world. From a young child, I wanted to be, yes, a musician and an artist, but I really had a huge desire to be a doctor and to heal the whole world and to save the world. I had one spiritualist tell me, it was something from like a previous life. I was an Atlantean from ancient Atlantis. I know it sounds woo woo. Hear me out. And she was telling me in this previous life, I was trying to get everyone out before Atlantis destroyed itself, right? Um, uh, and I mean, it's a myth to some people, and some people actually deeply believe that this previous age, this previous reality and world existed, and there are no documents, only myths and stories about this ancient time. But I've always had this drive to be of service, this drive to, and every time, like let's say I lost a patient, I would feel deep, deep, like hurt. Or especially with like when I first started teaching and the demographic that I was teaching in Arizona, these kids were going through very adult situations, and I cried a lot. I really took on a lot of the crap that they were bringing in, and it wasn't their fault. It was just energies coming from home, that kids don't know how to process. They don't. It's our job as guides to them as adults to teach them how to process difficult energies, difficult experiences. So what I find now in my teaching as an educator, these teenagers, these young teenagers are coming in and they don't know. They know that they need help, but they don't know how to ask for it, and they don't know how to process the pain that they're going through. They don't know how to process the cognitive dissonance. They don't know how to process the hypocrisy that they see in their life. They don't know how to process a lot of different complex experiences. And I've noticed in this round of teaching and education, I don't have that deep sense to save the whole world. Although I will say, even with adults, like I still get a lot of projections from people where it's like I do my inner work, I do my best to stay centered and grounded and integrated into the body, into this form. Um, and people feel very, very comfortable with sharing, oversharing, exchanging information, exchanging life experiences with me, and that's fine. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not a sin eater. I cannot. I now, after what happened yesterday, it was so apparent to me that I have really taken on the burden that does not belong to me. And it's almost like at the same time, I took on the burden that, and it was like I was putting on a mask to hide the stress of the burden. Like the fake, theater mask with the smiley face. And it was like I hid behind that to make the other person feel better. Because subconsciously, people can feel when people are centered and grounded and not centered and ungrounded and confused and lost. People can sense when you found yourself, when you found when you're anchored into your life experience. And that's very attractive. It's very magnetic. And so with that, it's now I'm like, okay, how do I release the guilt? Or because I automatically would feel guilty. And this is kind of like confessions of an empath, really. Empaths struggle with this. It's like well, and I don't mean to speak for all empaths, but for myself personally, I I have witnessed and I've observed that this feeling of guilt bubbles up when I don't I don't take on someone else's shame, blame, guilt, trauma, or karma. It's like I feel like I need to sacrifice. I need to give them all of my time. I need to give them all of my attention, all of my energy. And at the end of that exchange, it's like, would they do the same for me? And that's a big lesson for me. That's something that I have to constantly always check in with, like, how much time am I giving the self? How much time am I giving my spirit? How much time and attention and love am I allowing my soul to, you know or what do I mean by, like, allowing my soul to give me the messages and that I need to sustain myself spiritually? there's there's quite a lot to unpack this month when it comes to accountability, and I am so very excited to share with you, because it's such a big. It's, I think, one of the biggest wounds and the biggest issues with human nature and with the human collective. Because if we don't have someone outside of ourselves to blame, shame, guilt, and trauma dump and project, it then we're solely responsible for dealing with our shit, with our trash, with our garbage, and that's painful. And a lot of the time, people are I from what I've noticed, there's a spiritual laziness, there's emotional laziness, there's mental laziness, and that manifests into physical laziness. you know like, you wonder why there's some couch potatoes, or people who just kind of, who should be kind of working out and putting their health on the forefront. A lot of the time, it's a deep issue in fear of having to face the garbage pile that they're carrying in their energy field, in their consciousness. And so, yeah, I'm taking my mental health under serious consideration. I have minimized and bypassed a lot of what I have experienced and growing up, and therapy was never at the forefront, especially for, in the black, community, in the African American community. They tell you to go to God, go to Jesus, and let it go. Keep it in the family. Blood's thicker than water. That's the program. And thankfully, that program is slowly falling apart. You have a lot more, a lot more people of color, people who are, they grew up in cultures where you keep it in the family, keep family secrets, you keep things suppressed and oppressed for the good of all, to keep the family together, all that bull crap. And it's finally dismantling. It's finally becoming a thing of the past. And so, yeah, I look forward to therapy sessions, and just not as a indefinite, definitely going to therapy for the rest of my days, but I definitely have things that I have to process to release them, because there are things that happen to us that we have to process. It is, I mean, even going to therapy or speaking to someone, like a non-biased trained specialist, is a form of alchemy. You are doing the work, and you're processing the events and certain things that need your attention. And through that processing, you're able to discern what's your bull crap and what's not your bull crap. What's your trash and what's not your trash. Because doing it all, like, on your own, yes, that's great. And I think that strengthens your sovereignty and your autonomy as a spiritual being. But on a human level, it's also okay to reach out and talk to someone as well, someone who's qualified and who's professional and who's non-biased, not your best friend and not your coworker, not your family member, but someone that can, practice compassion, but also hold you accountable. You know what I'm saying? And it's that's where I'm at with it. So yeah, March is gonna be full of a lot of, I'm gonna say the word I'm hearing right now is upheaval, but in a good way. And March is also the first year of the year, the first month of the year, so it's actually a new year according to the ancient Roman calendar. The Gregorian calendar is off by like a few months actually. Um, Look into it. I've studied the Latin language, studied Latin for a while growing up in my early education, and so I when I look at words and root words and stuff, I can just look into it, look into the history of the calendars. But yeah, it was definitely very painful yesterday. And recently, I had a passing of a relative, and then or she transitioned out of this world, and another friend of mine is facing, I think, what was almost a deadly situation, and she's still here. I mean, there's just a lot that I'm processing. At the same time, though, I'm giving myself permission to not carry the weight of the world anymore. And the phrase "let go, let God," it could be very empowering or very, very dangerous, because you have to process before you let go. Because if you let go and you haven't processed the experience, you never, you're pretty much bypassing all the hard work you got to do. Okay? And I'm not saying you have to rehash every single thing in the past, but everybody knows what they're hanging on to. Everybody knows. You may not even be able to speak it, but you definitely can feel it. And, like, you process, you let go, and then you let God take over. And that is a huge, I've been using the phrase of bite, chew, swallow, digest, release. And I'm using this affirmation to get me through all professionally, because there's so much to do professionally, but personally it works as well, and it's very fitting. Sometimes we take just a little bite, just a little tiny bite, and then we chew that, and we swallow it, we process it, we digest it, and then we release it. And sometimes we bite too much, we take on too much than we can chew. We bite too much, and we kind of choke it down, and it doesn't process or digest very well. You see? So it's a process. It's something that you have to get better at. It takes time to get to that space. So I look forward into definitely more videos on accountability. We're going to talk about victimhood. We're going to talk about, all kinds of stuff. The victimhood mentality, giving yourself grace, right? Because you can't be a hard ass. You can't be a hard ass and think you got to do everything alone. That's not what I'm saying. Holding yourself accountable isn't saying I'm bad and I can do it all by myself. I'm an independent woman, or I'm an independent man, and I can hold down the fort. I can do it all. No. If anything, holding yourself accountable will help you to formulate the type of community that you need to reach your highest potential, to blend your lowest nature with your highest nature into one, to become whole. And sorry to say, no, I'm not sorry to say this, but to become whole, we need all of us. We need other people. And so, you know, I really look forward to the next conversation. May this message find you well and whole. Sorry it's a bit late. But yeah, I'll see you soon.